I can point to the night that I told myself I was untouchable. I was in Makati, in a rental on a high floor, and my laptop was on the table in front of me with the broker open, and the balance number kept going up and up while I watched. I kept refreshing it even though it updated on its own, because I liked seeing it move with my own eyes, and I laughed and spoke out loud to the screen like it could hear me. I had a beer next to me on a coaster, and a bag of food that I barely touched next to it, and my wildest dreams were coming true right in front of me. My phone was buzzing at me constantly. 2 girls asking if I was going out that evening, another asking if I wanted to meet up the following day, and I always told them yes, because I was confident in my work and I never wanted to appear boring. I had no boss looking over me anymore, no cold winters, and no crawling around job sites looking for the next gig. Just click and manage the risk and take whatever the market gave me. I felt like it finally made sense after I'd spent so many years perfecting my system. When the balance number passed the number I kept in my head for months, I can remember standing up and clapping, even though I was alone in the room. And I remember taking a picture of the screen and sending it in an email to my friend, telling him, "You see, this is what happens when you take risk and a chance," but he didn't respond. I found it hard to sleep. I was always watching the charts move up and down, but I always thought I'd take profit in the morning, and once I did, I'd treat the girls and book flights away for the weekend. And I walked over to the window and looked out, believing that what I found and what I was doing was my calling. I felt big in the moment, and I acted because of it. I was making so much money, and I was living every day like it was my last, spending everything that was coming in as lavishly as I could, because that's how I always wanted to live. Back home in Chicago, it was just a side hustle, something I did at the kitchen table after work, and I'd come home and crack open a beer and the laptop. I'd pull up the Forex charts and try to pick out my next trade, while at the same time reading forums and threads from people who seemed to always be sure of the markets. I only started with a couple of $100 in a tiny account, Forex trading, taking small trades on pairs I knew only by name. I honed it over multiple years, and I didn't make money straight away. And when I did start making bits of money, it was only tiny bits, because I wasn't using big leverage, and I didn't have much money in my accounts. But after a while, I got to a point where I was making enough to take a plane ticket to Vegas for the weekend. And one time, I made enough to completely cover my credit card debt, and it felt good that I found something that I appeared to be good at. It was always my idea to keep it fun and a hobby, and not try to connect it to my actual money and life. I had bills to pay like everyone else did, and I had to keep my day job. But I was hooked on trading, and I gave it years of my time trying to get to a level where I could maybe do it full time. And I remember telling an ex that it made sense to me and I knew what I was doing, but she rolled her eyes and said, "Fine, but don't waste any money." Forex became the thing that I thought I would use to escape my life. It's not like I needed to escape because my life wasn't that bad, really. I was doing okay, but I wasn't living large. I wasn't spending lavishly. I wasn't living like I always wanted to live. And Forex was always going to be my ticket to that after I understood that I could make money from it when I was treating it as a hobby. When I finished work and later cashed in my retirement account, I looked at my empty place and the small voice inside me was getting louder. It wasn't just that I was making bits of money with trading. Over 10 years, I put it into things and it looked promising. It was a desire I had to do something different. I was divorced from my ex, kids were already grown up, and it didn't feel right to stay where I was anymore. The belief built in me, all those small wins over the years, building an account from scratch, and always trying to make sure I did things right. I was thinking what I needed to do was take everything I had and use that as capital, and from there I could make 10 or 20 times the amount I was making right now. There was no difference, I told myself. The difference was mental in terms of how much money you were seeing on the line, and the fact that there was a lot of money on the line, you might make bad calls. But I just kept telling myself that this was my calling, this is what I was good at, and it was what I enjoyed doing. I decided that I was going to move to the Philippines. I'd travelled there a number of times since I got divorced and I loved it there. I always thought deep down I wanted to live in the Philippines, but I never saw a path to get me there. Now there was a path, and it seemed to be an inevitability I thought I was confident about. I think I was overconfident, and while I knew that if I wanted to trade the main hours back in Europe and the States, I would have to trade at all kinds of hours in the Philippines, that was one thing that excited me the most. I didn't quite have enough money to retire, and because of that, I thought this was the best thing for me to do, and it excited me so much. The Philippines was everything I thought a country should be. Exciting, busy, affordable, but you could also splash out for luxury as well if you wanted to. I felt like that was the place for me, like I fit in so well, whereas back home I felt a bit out of place. That's why it was so good to be there. So good to have taken this hobby that I'd done for years and actually done something with it other than keeping it as a hobby. The first few months I was in the Philippines were the good months. I always cut losses and didn't let them run, and when I let them run as far as I could, I started to lose a bit. But I lost it at the stop loss, and that was what separated me from what I became later. I wasn't trying to be greedy. I was putting in hours of work, and I wasn't getting silly at the time, and I felt proud of it. I got a lot better at ignoring the noise in the ups and downs of the days, concentrating on the bigger picture, but it became my whole life. Waking up, checking where any of the trades were, always happy when they were up, and when they were down, that was just part of the business. I never expected to win every trade. That doesn't happen. In fact, my system at the time, I was winning about 53% of the trades I made. And when I made them, I usually made 1 to 2 times as much as what I lost. So even a run of losers wouldn't hit me too hard. But I was wary, and I was building things slowly just to make sure I didn't get wiped out. To start with, I skipped going out at night, making sure everything was going well. And I always felt tired because waking up at different hours and checking on the markets. But I was happy, although tired. Happy to be in the Philippines. When I was going out, I was living the life that I'd always wanted to. Girls, drinks, and everything that goes along with that. And I did start to feel like I was a professional, not just a guy trading retail. I did look at the guys from Europe who could open accounts with so many different brokers than I could. They could get hundreds of time leverage where I could only get 50. But I told myself that 50 was still good enough, and even still it was too much as it was. Then I had a run that I should have put down to luck, but I didn't see it that way. Everything lined up, the prices went to where I needed them to go, and when it pulled back, I kept pushing harder, often placing multiple trades on the same pairs if it went against me, only needing for it to go back a little bit to make all my money back and then some. I knew it wasn't technically trading anymore, but it was working, and I felt like I made so much money. It was different. It was like I finally cracked the code and I wasn't guessing. I was reading it right, and while there were risks involved, I felt like they were calculated risk. I had 1 week that I made more than I made in a whole month working. I made $6,000 in a week, and that made me feel so excited, like I was doing the right thing. I started going in heavier, stacking trades on top of each other, and always moving stop losses when they were being approached because it felt like I couldn't lose. That went on for a few months. Of course, I had losers along the way, but most of my trades just seemed to go the way I wanted them to, and I went from living well to living like I always wanted to. I find I'm ordering steaks all the time to my room. I'm going out more and meeting more girls all the time. It just felt so good to be making what I was making, like it wasn't ever going to run out, and I felt like I had to keep up with it by spending what I was making. I remember trying to talk about what I did to my first girlfriend I had, telling her it was skill, not luck, and she believed me. Maybe because I was taking her out to the best restaurants, and I was starting to treat myself to everything I'd wanted. I wasn't thinking about building a buffer. I wasn't thinking about making sure I could afford the things if things went wrong. I was just living in the moment, and life was what life should be. I kept telling myself that I finally built something that fit my style. I slept with my laptop open next to me most nights, and I'd always checked when I woke up and convinced myself to allow myself to enjoy it, but to make sure I was always on top. I told myself never ignore any signs that I was taking things too far. But that was good at making rules, but I think the problem was following them was hard. But the money was coming in all the time, and one week I made $18,000, and that was when I started to go a bit mad. But you make $18,000 so easily, and it feels like you're doing it as part of a system that you've developed over years of hard work and effort. You do feel like you've earned it, and therefore you have the right to spend it, but you also feel like you found an infinite money loop and it's never going to stop. I never expected it to stop, but that was where I started taking my spending to the next level altogether. I bought myself a new phone. I started tipping a lot bigger when I was out, and I told myself I was doing that because I was in control. I kept telling buddies of mine that life felt easy for the first time, life was worth living for the first time. And it was the first time that I bought a watch that I always used to look at in the airport shops and never even touch. But now it was mine and it was on my wrist, and I felt that made me a better person because of it. I'd buy phones for girlfriends I had like it was nothing, and it wasn't a lot compared to what I spent on the watch, but $1,000 here and there did add up. It was easy to spend because the money was coming in. But most of all, I had all the girlfriends and all the money that they wanted from me. But it made me feel like a big man in the moment, and I wanted that life, and I thought that went along with the character I was building. My first girlfriend moved to stay with me permanently around this time, and I didn't think about my burn rate because things were going good week to week. I saw it as decades of hard work, but now I was printing money, and I drowned out the voice that was telling me that I was spending too much and I should be saving some for a rainy day. I took my girlfriend out all the time. We'd fly down to Cebu for a week. I'd still be trading, but I'd be still getting good results. We'd go out to the best restaurants, doing the best activities and staying in amazing hotels, and she grew accustomed to that lifestyle just like I did. I was buying things for her all the time. I mean, she was 21 and I knew why she was with me, but I didn't care because I was happy about it. Around this time, I upgraded my setup completely. I ended up with 4 monitors and a very powerful machine, and as far as I was concerned, this was going to give me an even better chance than just keeping the laptop. While I was still with my girlfriend, I met another girl, and I was clear to my first girlfriend that if you want to be with me, you're going to have to accept it. And to start with, she was good with it. They both were good with it. So I'm buying gifts for 2 girls now, and they're both my girlfriends in my mind. I'd be out in Makati or BGC, and if I met other girls, that was fine as well. I loved and I craved the attention, and I think that's what it was. The attention I got in the Philippines made me feel alive in a way I can't even accurately describe, and I knew the attention was coming because of the money, but I was making it myself, and I was enjoying the process of making it, and it wasn't like I was trying to change anyone's life. But the way I was paying for things, it was like I was now responsible for these girls' lives. And I suppose that was a good position to be in because it made me feel powerful. A few weeks later, things are going really well. I hadn't replicated my $18,000 week yet, but I was averaging between $5,000 to $10,000, and that felt crazy to think about. I started getting more messages from girls that I'd just met when I was out getting drunk, and my girlfriend, the one that was living me, couldn't do anything about it apart from try to be the best girlfriend. And that's when you start to realize that money is the most important thing in the world. I don't mean that in a shallow way. I'm not trying to say anything wrong, but money is the most important thing in the world, because if you have money, you can do what you want. And if you have money and people want your money, they have to do what you want. And while I didn't see it like that at the time, I had this beautiful girlfriend living with me, but she couldn't do anything about all my other girlfriends, because she wanted what I had. I should have kept track on what I spent when I was going out on different dates, all the gifts I bought, but I only tracked my trades because that was where my focus was. Things were still going well. I hadn't had a losing week for 2 months, and I'm just spending like money is going to go out of existence at the end of the year. It was around this time that a friend of mine came to visit the Philippines for the first time, and he saw me and said he didn't recognize me. I think I was getting caught up in the lifestyle, and I didn't want to take a step back and think I was going crazy because I was loving life and I was loving everything that came along with the success I was having from trading. You do start to get big-headed. You do start to think you've got it all arranged and you can't lose, and it was that feeling of being unable to lose that makes you more likely to lose. But at this point, I wasn't losing, and life was only getting better. My weekends turned into trips that I booked on the Friday, thinking what I was going to do at the weekend. Instead of doing what many people would do, maybe I'll go to the mall and maybe I'll go out for a meal, I'd be booking trips to Cebu for a few nights, or Mactan, or other places, and sometimes I just left my place in Makati and took a hotel in BGC just to stay somewhere different for a few nights. I was starting to book the nicest rooms, late checkouts, and if they had airport pickup, I was going for that as well. I was starting to order extra food in restaurants that I didn't need, tasting wine and swilling the glass around like I knew what I was doing, but I didn't. But I told myself that I'd earned it and I had to look the part. I was getting messages from girls all the time, everyone asking when I could see them again, and it was great to feel wanted. I probably had, aside from the girlfriend that lived with me, maybe 6 or even 7 girlfriends, and when it came to supporting each of them, helping each one of them out, it did take its toll. But when you can afford it, you don't care and you feel special that you're doing something that many people wish they could do. In terms of what money I actually had, it was the same, what I arrived with, because everything I'm making I'm spending as if there's no tomorrow, as if it was never going to go down. And while I could have been sensible and taken profits and put half away and spent half, that would have still given me a lot. But I didn't want to do that. I became a now or never kind of guy, and it was now or it was never. So to say things were going well would be a bit of an understatement. But then I had another run of huge trades in a row. I'm not talking about big, I'm talking about huge. The kind of size where you stare at the screen and actually ask yourself, is this real? I scaled in on some positions that were working, and the price just kept going in the direction I wanted it to. Deep down, I knew the risk was crazy, but I called it a conviction, and I was trading at 50 times leverage, the maximum I was allowed, but I felt like it wasn't even enough. The first day of those huge trades, I had to close out. I made $31,000 in a day, and that felt like I'd taken it to the next level again, and it was a feeling of elation that I can't even describe. Over the course of the next week, I made another $50,000, and that was when I thought I made it. I should have said to myself, good job, take it and invest it into something that will give you a safe return. I should have relaxed a bit and had a few weeks off, but I kept pushing. All that money I made in a week. It felt like I'd be stupid not to continue and try for more. That week I went out and bought myself another watch. Only this time it was more expensive than last because I didn't care, because I earned it and I deserved it, and it was now who I was. Temptations can creep up on you in every angle. The goals was one thing, but material items that I'd always wanted, I could now have them. I was never close to owning them before, but now I could, and I wasn't happy with just 1 or 2. I wanted everything. I wanted to be the guy that everyone wanted to be. And I felt like I was only a year of this continued success to be there forever. I started turning off the news alerts that I was subscribed to because I didn't want anything to scare me out of any trades. I started leaving trades on while I slept because I was getting a lot more comfortable, and I told myself I'd pull back eventually. But I never quite got to that eventually because the thrill of winning kept taking me over. I convinced myself that those bigger trades the previous week had showed me that regardless of how big I went, the outcome was still the same, and I took that as an excuse that I should go even bigger. All that mattered, I said to myself, was that I could take a few losses in a row without wrecking my account, and if I could, I was good. One day, my girlfriend came to me out of the blue and said she wanted $30,000 for a house close to her family. And I just said, go on then, here you go, like it was nothing. I didn't care. It wasn't like I wanted to live there or even visit. I just wanted to be the guy, and I was that guy. The house was built close to her family's house, or at least it started building. I'd never been, and I had no intention to go. But she went a few times over the next few weeks to check on how it was going, and the fact that I could go and do that with my money made me feel so happy and lucky, but it's crazy to look back on. I was hooked and I was addicted to it. I wanted more and more and more, and I could never get enough. That was the time I should have started to slow down, take a step back, take that extra money that I made and put some away, but I didn't. I kept pushing hard because making money that easily and being able to make that much money was a drug that I couldn't get enough of. And I kept pushing, thinking each last big push would be the last. By this point, I'd completely gone against all the planning and all the rules that I'd set for myself. I hardly paid any attention to it because I was still making good money. It's around this time I got serious with another girl and I took her to a really great resort on Bohol. That was a place I will remember forever. The beach, the sea, the resort, everything about it was amazing, and it cost a lot, so it should have been. But that was the life that I was meant to be living all my life. Sitting in a luxury hotel room, a bathtub, an extremely comfortable bed, a balcony overlooking the ocean, and calling room service and ordering anything I wanted on the menu without looking at the price. That was the feeling I loved, and the girl I was with loved it too, just the same, because I told her, anything you want is yours. Being able to do that, I felt like I was a big man, and even though I was away, I was still trading. But I was getting a bit careless. I was just doubling down every time something went wrong, and up until this point it had always come back again. I didn't even stop to think what would happen if I continued to double until the account was completely wiped out, because that would have destroyed my entire existence in my life. I didn't think about it because I didn't want to think about it. What I wanted to think about was where I was going to take my next girlfriend for a few days' break. When I got back to Manila, my girlfriend was waiting for me there, and that was the first time she had a big argument with me saying, "Why do you keep having other girlfriends? I live with you. You should get married to me." I tried to remind her that I'd just paid $30,000 to build a house for her in the province, and I didn't see how she couldn't see that as being the most important thing. She said she didn't want to be that type of girl. She wanted a stable relationship, and I told her that wasn't going to happen because I was living how I lived and I had the money for it. I never expected her to walk out the way she did, and that's when you realize that your kindness, or what you thought was kindness, cost me $30,000, plus probably $10,000 I'd spent on her over the past few months. I got really angry about that. I thought what she did was completely unacceptable, and I decided to take a week to myself and go to Angeles City, a place I'd never been before. I went completely wild, spending thousands and thousands of dollars across that week. I stayed in the best hotel there, and I was who I wanted to be. I probably had 30 girlfriends that week, but none of them serious. And I was just angry that my girlfriend had left me in Manila. What I thought was I'd given her $30,000 to start building a house. I wasn't concerned about the money. I mean, I was. It was just a principle. You take money from me, I'm the boss. Simple. It didn't sound too difficult at all. But that week in Angeles City gave me a bit of a break that I needed just by myself. I wasn't going anywhere with anyone, and I couldn't wait to get back to Manila to start moving ahead and making even more money, regardless of how much risk I was going to take. I didn't see it as risk at the time. I saw it as a system that I'd developed over years, and it hadn't let me down yet. At this point, we're probably talking about 3 months have gone by since I started, since I arrived in the Philippines, and I'd probably made $200,000. Looking back, the amount of risk I took was so crazy, but I was prepared to take the risk because I didn't think it was a risk. But out of all that money I'd made, I'd spent every last cent. But I still had my original account balance, which was all my money. And I thought the next 100,000 I make, I'll put it in the bank for a rainy day, thinking I was being even more sensible. I wasn't worried or anything. I was just thinking I needed to make sure I had something just in case. Thinking along the lines of maybe my broker will find out I'm trading from overseas and they'll have a problem with it. That was the problem I was thinking could happen, not anything to do with trading, because I was that confident. I got back to trading though after getting back from Angeles City. I started making bits of money again, and then I put on a trade that I did the same every single time. I kept adding to it and adding to it and adding to it, and it got to the point where I was down $50,000. If I added 3 more times, that would wipe out everything I had. And I told myself that blindly trusting the system would be the best answer because it's worked every time. And I added to again 2 more times and eventually came back and made 10,000. And that was a huge sigh of relief. But I still convinced myself it was a system that made it work, not blind luck. I didn't listen to myself either. I took that 10,000 and I moved it into a nicer condo. I moved to BGC in a penthouse unit. It was great, and I felt different living in such opulence. That's when the slide started. A trade went against me and I was doubling down, but I wouldn't take me all the way to zero. I hadn't gone in that heavy to start. But I kept going at it until my absolute limit was hit and I lost 25% of my account balance in that one trade. Wiped out in an instant. And while I should have panicked, I thought, one out of many, that's not bad. I can keep going and I can make it back and then some. Trying to convince myself I wasn't going to get shaken from it, and I did continue following the same patterns and trends. This was the first time I started trading on different pairs than I'd ever tried, dollar-yen, because it seemed that the up and downs could be bigger and I could make even more. And while I'm juggling all this, I'm getting calls from girls all the time who want things, who want to see me, and I'm going out at night with every girl that asks to, and I'm spending a lot of money. But at this point, I'm withdrawing out of my principal in order to be able to continue spending the way I was, thinking that because I've made so much money before, this money, I have the right to, so I'm bound to spend it. I spent 5% of my account in a week, going out every single night, and while I should have taken a step back and thought this was madness, I was just waiting for the next opportunity to present itself, and I planned to make all the money back I lost and more on top. And I was so convinced it was going to work, because it had every time before. The next week, I built a trade, doubling down every time. My account balance showed 65,000 under. Somehow, by the grace of God, I pulled that back and made 10,000 on it, and that was another sigh of relief. And I think that was the first wake-up call that I needed to stop this lunacy before I lost everything. I had a serious talk with myself about what I was doing, and the fact I had so many girlfriends, the fact I was spending so much money, the fact that I built a house for a girl and she left me just like that. I decided I had to stop with it because this wasn't really who I was or who I wanted to be. It just felt good in the moment to be able to experience it. I think that was what it was like. I looked at my situation and thought all I needed was to get back what I lost and maybe $200,000. That's all I needed. Withdraw it all and just live a normal existence like I should have done from the start. I started putting a plan in place to make sure this would happen. And I knew it would be risky, doubling down, but it had only failed me once before, and I only needed it to work once more time. And for some reason I pushed it to the back of my mind that if I lost, I would lose everything, because that wasn't even a possibility. It wasn't even a possibility that I would lose, because I was convinced it would work. Regardless of how stupid it sounded, I convinced myself that this was my ticket to getting out of this crazy life I was living, and put myself in a place where I should have been before I went mad. Basically, what I decided, if I spell it out better than that, was I was going to gamble everything I had and try to make a lot of money on an extremely risky trade that had a huge chance of failing. But because I'd been lucky so far, I thought it was easy. That's what I was doing, but I didn't realize how stupid it was at the time. I spent 2 weeks looking for the right opportunity to build out my final trade. I started getting restless, drinking. I'd leave the phone unanswered when a girl called because I knew I couldn't go there anymore. But at the time, I didn't feel like I was taking any unnecessary risks. I just felt like within a month, I should be where I needed to be. I thought I had all that success before. I'd have years of playing around and practicing it and honing it, that I thought I'd be able to come out ahead and on top. I remember the day exactly. I really do. I opened a trade on the euro dollar, and I went in heavy, hoping to take a quick jump and look for another one. But it was built in a way that I could keep doubling down, and if that worked, I'd get what I wanted. It quickly turned against me. And when that day came to an end, I'd put on another 4 trades, and I usually went in every 25 points that it dropped. And I woke up the following morning, and another one of those trades had opened. When I looked that morning, I was about 20 points away from losing everything. That was when it hit me that what I was doing wasn't trading at all. It was stupid. It wasn't calculated. I'd been gambling. It was so different to what I was doing before I'd arrived in the Philippines, or even when I arrived to start with, where I was placing carefully thought out trades. If I hit the stop loss, I'd take the loss. But now, if it dropped 20 points, I'd be completely wiped out. And there was no point exiting there and then, because I'd still only have 25,000 left. That was the worst moment of my life, up until then anyway, when the realization hit. I never thought it would go that low. I never thought it would happen, and for the rest of the day, it hovered around the same level. getting as close to 18 points from the stop loss, and I'd never been drunk as well as like I had then, and that made it worse. The following morning, it was up slightly, and I contemplated cutting my losses and still having a bit of money left, but it would have still meant losing over $100,000. Probably 160 I would have lost, but I'd still have enough money to get my head back in the game and eke out an existence until I got my social security. But the problem was, my plan was to get to a point where, okay, I wouldn't have so many girlfriends, I might have one, but I still wanted enough money to be able to go to resorts when I wanted to go to the types of restaurants I wanted to every time I wanted to. And if I cut losses, it wouldn't have worked like that. I wouldn't have enough. So I let the gamble run. And the following day, that was when I lost everything. Around $220,000 I lost all at once. And while I did make more than that trading, I spent all that I made, all of it. Won on a house just like that for $30,000. And I sat there looking at the screen, trying to come to terms with the fact that my whole world ended the way I knew it. I mean, I had money in the bank, maybe $10,000. I had the watches that I bought and other things I bought that I could probably sell. Shouldn't have bought them in the first place. But it wasn't anywhere close to being able to live the life I wanted. And it wasn't the money. It was the life that went along with it that I mourned. And that was my darkest day. My darkest day in the Philippines. The darkest day of my life. All gone through reckless trading that before I'd been so lucky with that I never thought I was being lucky. It was all gone, and my Philippines dream was over. It took me a week just to get my head right. I didn't know what I was going to do, but what I did was return home, get back to work. I sold my watches, I sold everything I'd bought that I didn't need, and I probably got back $40,000 in total. Then I had to go about rebuilding my life. Even though my life was already at retirement age, that was the worst thing that could have happened to me when it did. And it hurts. It really hurts to think about that I was gambling. I wasn't trading at all. And I was insanely lucky for a few months. It was only luck. It wasn't skill. Blind luck got me to that position. And I only needed to be lucky one more time. But I wasn't. I often wonder, would I have really stopped if that last trade worked the way I expected it to? Would I have settled down and enjoyed retirement? I might have done, but I get the urge might have made me want to do more and be the big guy again, who splashed money around like it was nothing. It's difficult to say either way because I will never really know. I haven't traded since. It was a hobby for years and I loved it. The moment I tried to make it more, that was when I took huge risks, and that was the moment I was finished. But it was those early lucky trades that made me think I was on top of the world and I'd never fail. But I did fail, and I'm still paying the price today.